Welcome back to Holistic Healing Association. Today, with me is Jennifer Asidao Querubin. Hi, Jennifer.
Glad to be here.
Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So I'm based just right outside of Chicago, Illinois, in the US. I'm second generation Filipino American. So I find that's pretty significant actually. My parents migrated like in the 70s, and I grew up in a political family. It's a big part of my history. So I didn't really grow up very mainstream, you could say, and it's been a big part of my processing with my life's journey. And so I kind of like saw the world in a different viewpoint. Um, Eventually, through again, I didn't know this, but through some trauma, I made the decision and I realized it was like a response to trauma to go into the nursing field because that's really in my community, that's what's considered the thing to do. So I was a nurse for about 20 years, and the best way I can describe it, and maybe your audience can relate to this, is I felt like I was trying to be a square peg trying to fit into a round hole all the time. And it really affected my nervous system because I literally, I can feel it now just talking about it, like just going to the hospital and playing this role and just trying to be what I think I'm supposed to be. And I think it came to a point where I couldn't take it anymore. And I feel like on the spiritual level, I was guided to a type of study about the subconscious mind. That's what led me to coaching. I finally left nursing at 7 years ago. And then as I was coaching people, I was learning about people's traumatic experiences. And I'm just like, I did not feel equipped at all to like help them. And then the deeper parts of me, like the fragmented parts of me, were coming to the forefront of my consciousness. Like it was really a trippy experience. Like the school of thought that I was trained in, like did not teach about this. So I didn't know what was going on with me. And so I kind of like really have been on my own journey of healing. Let's put it that way.
And what do you
Yeah.
mean?
Go ahead. Yeah.
What do you mean about how you're educated? They didn't teach about.
Right, right. So my first school of thought that I was trained in was very much about achievement. And because I had these really, really big dreams. And what I realize is, and I think your audience may resonate with this, is that, well, if I attain this, then it's going to give me something. Does that make sense? Like
That makes sense.
I'm going to be made whole in some way. And I wasn't attaining this thing. Right. So I kept on looping, like, okay, why is this happening? So the school of thought is, well, everything that's manifesting in your life is your subconscious mind. Like there's a deeper belief in the subconscious level, which is why it's manifesting, which is very, very true. So the school of thought that I was trained in originally was, well, just change the programming, right? You consciously create the thought that you want to see in your physical experience. You train your subconscious mind to believe that, and then voila, right? But the truth is, it's not that. I would say there's more to it than that. So there are deeper unconscious things that need to be dealt with. So that's like, yeah, that's been my journey. And clearing up the unconscious stuff um has helped me, well, I would say has helped me come to more compassion for myself and more compassion for other people too.
Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And has there been a generational trauma in your family?
Yeah, I would say so. Like that started really surfacing. Like I was experiencing the surfacing of my wounds in many different fronts. And to tell you frankly, I'm still not dealing with it, but like I'm unfolding and healing it step by step now. It's actually better now. But a lot of it was like patterns in my family that through deeper work, I realized that I was unconsciously manifesting the same things, like patterns in my family. And a lot of it in my right now, what's coming in this conversation is in my mom's side, there's kind of like this real disconnect with emotional connection. So I grew up with that. And there's also a dynamic with my parents. So I recreated the same dynamic of my own marriage. And I think like even again, like being second generation Filipino American, like there's a lot of history in my family. So on my dad's side, my grandfather was a survivor of the Bataan Death March. And my grandmother was a survivor of like the occupation of the Japanese in the islands. So I don't know. I think there's kind of like I think a lot of immigrant families can relate to this. Like there's a lot of survival. Like and that's what again, it's like why do you go into nursing, right? Because you want to survive. It's not really about, genuine individual expression. It's just this is what you do to get ahead, even at the expense of your personal happiness. You know what I mean? Like so I think it's part of the evolution of communities, of like nations, these types of things. And I think coming to, or being raised in a country like America allows for that evolution to happen because we have like a greater capacity for that more, you know, that mobility that we seek in life, that expression and um that prosperity, et cetera, et
More
cetera.
opportunities.
You have more opportunity. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. But that survival is definitely like imprinted in me too, which I've had to kind of um look at and like heal.
And have you experienced a personal trauma yourself in your own life?
Yeah, my personal traumas, I didn't realize like what trauma really was until first what happened was my first school of thought taught me about the subconscious mind. And then one of the main leaders in that school of thought went deeper into healing. And I started learning under him. And that made all the difference for me. So what I didn't realize, like for example, if I had a sales call and I would bring this to my coach, to my mentor at the time, like that sales call, if it didn't do well, it would trigger me. It was the biggest breakthrough I ever had. So when he said, well, how did you feel during a sales call? I expressed my emotions and then he led me to, okay, when was the earliest time that you felt that way? And it was when I was bullied. When I was
Being
like,
bullied.
yeah, oh yeah, bullying. And the bullying was extensive in my own family and then in the schooling system that I was part of. So it's really interesting, like being in business, like facing these things in yourself and like how, especially when you break away from the pack. See, that's another thing, right? You're breaking away from the normalcy, so to speak, of the programming of like your family, your community, you're breaking off into to your own thing. You're gonna face these things. They start surfacing. And one of them was that I didn't fully digest the experience of being rejected
That would be
by
really hard.
I'm sorry, what is it?
That would be really hard to be
Yeah.
rejected.
Oh yeah, to be rejected. Oh yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And I must have like developed this really thick skin. I remember in nursing when I would break down because of like being yelled at by doctors or like just not being appreciated, by, because you work extremely hard in nursing. And I remember one of my mentors in nursing said to me, "Get tough," like that, like just and I think a lot of us are programmed to like not feel, just get tough and, push through it and,
Carry on,
and
soldier on.
be a soldier. And like in the business world, it's like that too. It's like, whatever, like you're not supposed to feel your negative emotions. You're just supposed to be positive and blah, blah, blah. And there was something so unsettling in me about it. Like I felt like, we talk about like how we can fragment. And that doesn't really help anyone by just
What does
keeping,
that mean? Just for our viewers.
it means where when you like there's a part of yourself that you want to ignore and you kind of sweep it underneath the carpet and you just keep on going in this direction, but you still have this underlying part of yourself that in my experience has been like, hey, hello, like I need to be acknowledged and reintegrated back into you. Yeah.
Makes
And
sense.
I could feel it. I could feel it like energetically. And it's been really a very interesting journey so far. Just like it put it that way. Yeah.
And how old were you when you were being bullied?
Oh, well, the bullying really started, the feeling like I wasn't a part of even the cool crowd in my family, believe it or not. Probably when I was like, oh, really young, probably like four
Oh,
or
wow.
five. Yeah, yeah. And I didn't know it was happening to me because I remember the very first early memories is these were fa extended family members that whenever, anyway. Um they they would do things to me, not in any like really horrific, malicious way, but they would do things like they would cut my hair and then like but my mom told me this. My mom told me this. She was horrified at what they had done to me, and then they would like make fun of me at the same time. And but I must have been absorbing this at that young age, like really unconsciously. Yeah. So it started really early for me.
And what about in school? What age did it start?
I remember the memories was probably around the time when I was like about 10 years old. And it's kind of weird. It's like I remember just being a regular person in school and then one girl telling me because there was a new person that came in and she was like the dynamic changed in our classroom and she became like I know it sounds stupid, but she became like the cool person. And then this girl told me that I was on the outs. Like I wasn't part of their clique. Like really what the term is. Blatantly told me that. And it was in the bathroom when she told me, like for whatever, some people just made a decision they didn't like me. And then rallied the troops, and then she was like the spokesperson and told me, that I'm like, oh, so so yeah, that happened.
And how did
Yeah.
that impact you?
It definitely, I shrunk. Like I could feel it like even somatically in the body of hiding,
Okay.
just hiding. And it affected my business because in your business, you have to be out there to promote. Um, and that, part of, again, that part of self that wants to hide can pop up.
That
And
10-year-old child.
yeah, the 10-year-old child. Yeah. Yeah.
And how was your high school experience?
It was complex. You know what? My high school experience, I was a very truant student. I think again, trauma response. I think it was my way of avoiding, like running away. So I would skip class a lot.
Jennifer, that
Yeah.
surprises me.
Oh,
Knowing you.
well, yeah. And you know what? And I consider myself to be a pretty smart person. Like if I really applied myself, like I would probably end up in some whatever amazing college or whatever. But it was just the pain, the pain. the pain of like whatever's pre-existing inside, and then being in that
Environment.
environment,
So
just
you
not.
did not enjoy high school.
I didn't enjoy it. No. Didn't go to homecoming. I don't know what that is. Like I don't know. Um, I even in college days, like I never like stayed on campus and like, I don't know that world. I paid my way through my schooling. And then entering the nursing environment, like, and I entered the nursing environment like professionally at the age of 20. So, and then seeing life and death situations at that young age. I think like just talking about this right now, like I just grew up fast. And I'm sure a lot of people have grown up fast, don't get me wrong. But yeah, yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
And when did you realize you had experienced trauma?
So there's a very distinct experience I had. I want to maybe share with your audience. So I talked about this little bit earlier in our conversation where I felt like energetically there was something off, even though I'm like doing all the right things, like I'm reprogramming my subconscious mind, I'm trying to be positive, blah blah blah. And part of my business building like daily activities, let's put it that way, was to network. So I met with on one of these social platforms, I met this guy who did meditations in Los Angeles. He's based in Los Angeles, and he really liked my vibe. It's like, I've met people like you who consult about the subconscious mind, but you're different. And he's like, you know what? I'd like to give you a complimentary meditation experience. I'm like, sure, I'm all for it. And my body was telling me to do it. And so when he brought me to this guided meditation, the weirdest thing is that I saw a very young version of myself but very angry. And one of the experiences with the extended family members who used to kind of like play around with me is they chopped off all my hair. And I saw that version of myself with her hair all chopped up.
Oh, wow.
And she was so angry, but there was actually like a shadow over her.
Okay.
And so what happened was it kind of freaked me out, but at the same time, I'm like, you know what? Let me just pay attention to this. And this man totally respected my experience because after we were done with the meditation, I told him what I saw, and he goes, like, just sit with it. You know what I mean? So later on, I continued to network and I meet this woman. I believe she's out of Arkansas or something, like a different part of the United States. And she tells me about her modality. And it's called they deal with the body, like somatics. And Aaron, everything in my body was telling me to work with this woman, like everything. Like I knew hands down, I needed to work with her. So this is what happens. I'm like, I'm in. And she was shocked that I understood what she did. Because I think what we do, because we do somatics, you do somatics, I do somatics. She like, um, anyway, long story short, she started like muscle testing me.
Okay.
And I kid you not, Aaron, this is what happened. So that fragmented part of myself actually spoke to me the
Okay.
very first session. And the voice that spoke to me, the young girl, said, finally, you're paying attention to me.
Interesting.
Whoa. When I tell people that, I've only told like very few people that they're like, whoa, they're like that. And it was so real. And then that started my real healing journey. Like, but her modality dealt with muscle testing, right?
Okay.
So that's when I learned, and then she gave me this paper that talked about trauma, and she was explaining to me my first like initial conversation with her was like before onboarding me, she explained that like trauma was almost like the what I read from her paper, it's almost like oil that's in the ground that's stagnant, but when you process it, it becomes like released energy. And that energy can be used for very good purposes in life.
And what do you mean by energy?
Yeah, that's a good question. Um, well, energy, it's like the experience that we had in our past that we haven't fully digested, so we suppress it.
So our emotions?
Our emotions, yes, yes, that's part of it. Is our emotions, yeah, and the emotions around that experience, yes, yes, I would say so.
So the little girl was being ignored. Is that correct? And she just wanted to be heard?
Yeah, and you know what? That little girl, I guess, never. In one of my sessions with you, it came out. I remember that she never got to fully express almost like a indignation or a like fighting for herself situation, like being able to stand up for herself. I remember one session with you, it was a very interesting thing. I think I can't exactly remember I remember we were touching on when I was bullied, and you asked a really good question, and I said, "You're no better than me." That was like, what did she want to say? And it came out, I was like, "You're no better than me." But I guess at that time, like I didn't have the vocabulary, I didn't have um the conscious awareness to stand up for myself. Eventually I did later on because that type of bullying happened for many years. And I remember probably when I was like maybe, I don't know, I think it was like I was maybe preteen. I did stand up for myself with these particular people
That's
in my
good.
family. Yeah.
And
Like, later on.
what are all the different forms of bullying you experienced?
That's a good question. I think it's very subtle. Like well, I did experience um it wasn't like being pushed around like physically, but it was mainly psychologically and emotionally. But it wasn't physical like aggression. It was being shunned and like just being like making it known to me that I'm not welcome.
Oh,
Let's put it
that
that
would
way.
be really hard,
Mm,
especially in the developmental years
yeah, yeah.
when all we want to do is fit in.
Yeah.
And how has embodied processing helped you heal?
May I remember, well, it's helped me heal by revisiting the parts of myself that I had not in the past, like acknowledged and reconciled with. And that has been like the greatest gift to me. And then I feel good because, the more I'm healed, the better I can serve others. And that's what I've really found in leadership, in mentorship, in coaching. Like the more that soul is healed, they have greater capacity to serve other people.
And serve your
So
clients.
yeah, to serve my clients. Yeah, yeah, yeah. So embodiment, it's also helped me understand that consciousness, like it's not just from like an intellectual perspective, but it's also like very much in the body itself, right? And I didn't know this, but very early on, the very first school of thought that I was trained in personal development, which is very mental, that some of my colleagues, my good friends would tell me, "Jen, your heart is blocked." And I didn't know. I had no idea. And it was because of my wounds. It's the wounds that I hadn't processed yet, and
And putting
let
up
go
many
of.
walls.
Yeah, I had a lot of walls, right, right, right. And I think that what's really powerful about embodiment processing too is there's an empowerment that happens with it. Like for example, like I've worked with practitioners where they do emotion code. I don't know if you're familiar with that one, but they'll actually like they kind of act as like a proxy for you to clear out emotional blockages. And, it's helped. I've literally have had experience where the blockage would manifest as like a pain in my body. And after I had an emotion code session, that pain went away. But there's something about bringing a person to their own journey in their own bodies where they gain capacity to look at these things, and there's something very empowering about that. So what I would say is the empowerment aspect is really key with embodiment processing, because you're also given tools as well.
And are you glad you started your healing journey?
There's no other way that I've been able to even, I think, even like come this far. And I mean, I say that relative to my experience, and my journey. But yeah, I've I've overcome a lot of things, and I continue to. And the key thing is healing, and that's actually one thing I share is it's not even the achieving of things that the soul is really after. It's actually they're after the healing of it. They're
And it's a
healing.
journey.
Yeah. Yeah.
And what advice would you have for our viewers?
My advice is to really pay attention to your triggers. And I've been thinking about this, like you'll get farther along. Maybe I would speak to people who are probably like in business or whatever, but you'll get farther along getting to the heart of the situation. If something isn't working out, let's put it this way, if something isn't working out in general, if something isn't working out, like it's a relationship or whatever, or finances or whatever, like when we can pay attention to our triggers, like when we feel really aggravated about something or angry about something, or if we feel like we want to freeze or just run away, and I have all of these, or we want to just please people as a way of surviving. My advice for people is to really pay attention to that, because these may not be things that we want to see in ourselves, but once we do, it creates the threshold for releasing things in our lives that have served us its purpose before, but no longer serving us moving on to like the next stages of our journey. And that's like to be more mindful, to be more present. That's my biggest advice for people.
Okay. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I highly recommend, Erin. I'm so grateful for our time together, like the sessions that you've given me. And I have to say too, I've been reflecting on this morning. When we work with people that are purely objective, that's like one of the key ingredients to transformation, because like you've brought things to me that I would have never thought of on my own.
Well, that's nice of you to say.
Yeah,
Thank you.
it's really important to work with people, and I highly recommend working with you.
Oh, well, thank you. Thank you. Until next time, thank you for joining in.